In 2017, the most powerful board of directors in Silicon Valley called an emergency meeting. On the agenda was one item: getting rid of their own CEO. The company was worth $70 billion. It had changed the way every person in the developed world moved around their city. It had beaten taxi industries in hundreds of cities across the globe. It had survived regulatory battles in country after country. And the man who built all of that was sitting in a room being told his time was over. His name was Travis Kalanick, and when they told him it was done, he cried. Not privately, in front of everyone. That moment, a founder weeping as his own board takes everything from him, is where this story ends. But to understand why it happened, we need to go back to the beginning. Travis Kalanick was not the kind of person who made people comfortable. He was aggressive, confrontational. He believed that the only way to win was to move faster and hit harder than anyone else in the room. He had failed before, badly, and it had made him someone who trusted almost nobody and questioned almost everything. When he co-founded Uber in 2009, the idea was simple. Press a button, get a ride. But the way he built it was anything but simple.
Uber didn't enter new cities politely. It didn't ask regulators for permission. It didn't sit down with taxi unions to discuss a peaceful transition. It launched. And when cities tried to shut it down, it fought, publicly, loudly, with lawyers and lobbyists and PR campaigns designed to make local governments look like they were protecting corrupt taxi monopolies at the expense of ordinary people. In most cases, it worked. The strategy was genius in a very specific way. Kalanick understood something that most founders miss. In a marketplace business, the network is everything. The more drivers you have, the shorter the wait times. The shorter the wait times, the more riders you attract. The more riders you attract, the more drivers want to join. And once that flywheel starts spinning fast enough, it becomes almost impossible to stop. But building that network required being in as many cities as possible as fast as possible, which meant there was no time for patience, no time for permission, no time for the careful, measured approach that business schools teach. Move fast. Deal with the consequences later. For years, this worked better than almost anyone thought possible.
Uber raised money at valuations that seemed insane. It expanded into dozens of countries. It crushed competitors. It made Travis Kalanick one of the most celebrated founders in the world. Fast Company called him a genius. Magazines put him on covers. He became the symbol of a new kind of founder, one who didn't play by the rules, because he believed the rules were wrong. But the culture he built inside Uber was a direct reflection of how he operated outside it. Win at all costs. Move fast and don't apologize. Anyone who can't keep up gets left behind. In early 2017, a former Uber engineer named Susan Fowler published a blog post. It was quiet, just one person's account of her time at the company. No lawyers, no press conference, just a woman writing honestly about what she had experienced working there. She described systematic sexual harassment. She described going to HR and being told the man who harassed her was a high performer and it was her first offense, so nothing would be done. She described a pattern so consistent and so widespread that it couldn't be explained as individual bad behavior. It had to be culture. That blog post was read by millions of people within 48 hours, and it cracked something open inside Uber that could not be closed again. What followed was one of the most public corporate unravelings in Silicon Valley history. A video surfaced of Kalanick arguing aggressively with an Uber driver who complained about falling wages. The driver was calm.
Kalanick was dismissive and cruel in a way that was impossible to watch without feeling uncomfortable. More stories came out about the culture, about the way women were treated, about the way anyone who raised concerns was pushed out.
An investigation was launched. Former Attorney General Eric Holder was brought in to review the company's culture and practices. The report that came back was devastating. Meanwhile, Kalanick was dealing with a personal tragedy. His mother had died in a boating accident. He took a leave of absence. And while he was gone, the board made their decision. When Kalanick came back,
5 of Uber's major investors sent him a letter. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't a conversation starter. It was a demand. Resign now. The letter said the company needed new leadership, that the culture had become a liability too large to ignore, that the vision, however brilliant, could not survive under the person who created it.
Kalanick asked for more time. They said no. He cried, and then he resigned. The man who built a $70 billion company from a simple idea, press a button, get a ride, walked out of the building he had created and didn't come back. Now, here's the part of the story most people miss. Travis Kalanick was not wrong about the opportunity. He was not wrong about the market. He was not wrong about the strategy. He was wrong about the cost of building the way he built. The same aggression that allowed Uber to take on taxi monopolies in 100 cities also created a workplace where people were afraid to speak up. The same refusal to ask permission that let Uber expand faster than any competitor also meant nobody ever asked whether the way they were treating their own employees was acceptable. The culture he created outside Uber, move fast, hit hard, deal with consequences later, became the culture inside Uber too. And inside a company, that culture doesn't produce growth. It produces damage. This is the central lesson of Super Pumped, and it is one that every founder needs to sit with.
The way you build is as important as what you build. Not because of ethics lectures or corporate responsibility statements, but because the culture you create in the early days of a company becomes almost impossible to change later. It gets baked in. It becomes the water everyone swims in. And eventually, it either becomes your greatest asset or your most expensive liability. For Uber, it became the liability.
Uber brought in Dara Khosrowshahi as CEO, a calmer, more measured leader, someone who could talk to regulators without making them feel attacked, someone who apologized when apologies were needed. Under his leadership, Uber went public. The company stabilized. It survived. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Without Travis Kalanick's aggression, his refusal to ask permission, his willingness to fight everyone at the same time, Uber might never have existed at all. The taxi industry and the regulators who protected it would have killed the company before it ever reached the scale that made it unstoppable. You needed someone willing to fight like that to build what Uber became. You just couldn't keep that person in charge once the fighting was done. That tension between the founder who builds and the leader who sustains is one of the oldest problems in business, and it has no clean answer. What it does have is a lesson.
Know which one you are. Know what stage your company is in. And be honest enough with yourself to recognize when the qualities that got you here are the same qualities that will prevent you from getting where you want to go next. That is the hardest thing anyone building something will ever have to do. And most people never do it. If this story made you think differently about how you build, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, because every week we open a book that changes how you see the world. See you in the next one.